You might be thinking, how is the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, forced to recognize the failure and collapse of the Chinese economy by being forced to capitulate to the circumstances? China has no choice but to develop a solution that might assist them in escaping this trap. Otherwise, give up. Key. Watching to know more about the CCP collapse. Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, and greetings. Today's video will show you China news. Xi Jinping is done. CCP wailed COLAPSE. So, stay focused. China's economy is currently suffering from excessive internal turmoil and foreign tensions that are also causing it great discomfort. Cities are feeling the heat of the situation more and more, and it appears like a civil war of some sort is ready to break out. Relations with Taiwan are also rising. It was an overview of the internal issue. Now, let's shed some light on the problem endangering China from abroad, the Taiwanese issue. When the Sino-Japanese War concluded in 1895, this started. The world included Taiwan in the Japanese Empire at that time. Formosa was the new name given to it after the war, and they used it for over 5 decades. But after the Second World War, in 1945, the Japanese Empire collapsed, and Taiwan joined hands with China to help the country recover from the devastation and collapse. However, China was not in the best circumstances at the time either. There were internal conflicts and civil war there. The Communist Party and the Nationalist Party were increasingly at odds. However, the Nationalist Party turned around and departed China, moving to Taiwan. The battle between these parties has now evolved into a conflict between two nations. Let's hop to 2022 when things heat up. Despite China's warning, the USA dispatched Nancy Pelosi, one of its prominent leaders, to Taiwan. And this upset China. It is how things became so intense, and this heat will undoubtedly harm or ruin both their economy and the world economy. The Taiwan Strait, one of the busiest commercial channels globally, would undoubtedly be impacted by Chinese actions against Taiwan, such as increased military exercises. This year, the river was traversed by 88% of the biggest ships by tonnage and over half of the world's container fleet. However, more assertive operations in the strait may affect trade routes that use Chinese ports rather than Taiwanese ones. Beyond a little divergence of vessels away from designated military exclusion zones, the recent Chinese military drills have had little effect on container traffic in the Taiwan Strait. While admittance to Taiwanese ports is not reliant on crossing the Taiwan Strait, entry to ports in northern China and Hong Kong frequently is. However, other analysts claim that the value of the commerce that China's penalties target only makes up a minor fraction of less than 1% of Taiwan's GDP, lessening the impact of China's statements. Without a doubt, Taiwan will suffer if the chain invades it. But China itself will suffer the most because, as I already mentioned, the internal ups and downs that are currently taking place will make it impossible for China to continue to exist. China will only continue its current course for a short time. It is nothing but a terrifying nightmare to them. People are moving around, and there may even be some little acts of violence. People are irrationally enraged and insane. The bank has frozen its deposits, which is the cause. The Chinese authorities are using devious tactics to deceive their people into anticipating all of this, but that will soon come to an end. Big real estate businesses and the Chinese government itself ignited the hellfire that would eventually destroy the Chinese economy. China froze deposits worth more than $6 billion, and that's when all this trouble started. Own money withdrawals were not permitted. That inflamed them, and the ensuing rage and fire manifested itself in the form of violent demonstrations. They were followed by homebuyers who defaulted on nearly $300 billion in mortgages. The entire situation has been out of hand. The police intervened to calm the scene as a result of this. Due to the magnitude of the mortgage situation, China is going through a far worse recession than it did in 2008. The Chinese Communist Party imposed severe internet restrictions, yet the demonstrations spread swiftly online. It was different, with only 2 or 3 banks. In China, hundreds of banks have become vulnerable to this severe crisis. Additionally, terrible news was announced at an internal real estate meeting. Government also froze building supplies covering around 300 million square meters, indicating that the local administration could not withstand the pressure and that even 200 to 300 billion yuan was insufficient. Certain people are avoiding mortgage payments. It starts at almost 2 trillion yuan, or an astounding $300 billion in dollars. Additionally, the mortgage and bank freeze is having a domino effect. Because the first 5 banks failed, this carnage soon spread to 20 institutions, which is still happening. And China's financial system will undoubtedly collapse. The rest of the world knows that the Chinese economy will collapse due to social upheaval. This rage bubble was being crammed with irritation over the mismanagement and the greed building up, which eventually resulted in exploding in demonstrations and mayhem. The boycott about the mortgage is not a sudden fierceness. People went insane and began buying property aggressively as the price rose daily, oblivious to the possibility that real estate values may ever fall. After hearing the figures, you can determine the haste. According to estimates, real estate accounts for between 70 and 80% of each Chinese citizen's wealth. Over time, this developed into a culture, with the younger generations growing up to own at least one piece of real estate. It has been going on for years, and because of this, real estate developers have benefited from the ongoing craze. And it was at this point that the idea of pre-sale entered the market, as builders began selling homes even before clearing the ground for them. And as a result of their hysteria over the steadily growing costs, individuals have merely started accepting them without question in the hopes of someday owning a home. They were paying for the unrealized property. And the Chinese National Bureau of Statistics, which reports that 34.5% of the entire income of the real estate development had come through pre-sales, is proof that this was a major success for the developers. The frightening part comes next. These developers did not use the money to build those already sold homes. They put that cash to work by selling more pre-sale homes. With that money, they purchased an increasing amount of land and placed it up for pre-sale. It certainly sounds like a Ponzi scam. It was going well until the purchasers began to show skepticism due to the developers' failure to deliver the homes by the promised date. And how is that possible for them? Since they were using the money for other things, like additional pre-sales, they needed more money to build houses. China experts have been arguing for the end of the communist government in China since the provocative article, "The Coming Chinese Crack-Up" by David Shambaugh was published on March 6, 2015. In his article, Shambaugh emphasized 2 key points: the end of an era for communist authority in China and the improvement of that end under Xi Jinping's harsh actions. His opponents generally agreed with him regarding his second argument, but rarely questioned his first. The CCP has undoubtedly reached its conclusion by global communist standards. For instance, communist authority in the Soviet Union ended on December 26, 1991, after 70 years. The Chinese Communist Party will have governed the People's Republic of China for 66 years in 6 months. The CCP doesn't appear likely to accept its Soviet counterpart by a significant margin due to extensive corruption at every party and government level. A person accepted bribes worth 4 million yuan, and a deputy chairman of the Central Military Commission accepted cash bribes weighing approximately more than another huge amount. However, the CCP's authority is not at its peak by Chinese dynasty standards. Instead, it might be just getting started. According to the Qing dynasty's 267-year dominance as the previous dynasty, CCP control remains in its infancy. Under the intelligent guidance of Emperor Kangxi, China was at its height as a powerful and affluent nation in 1710, 66 years into the Qing dynasty's rule. Another 200 years would pass during the dynasty. The CCP has an ancient civilization past as a dynasty in power. Although Mao Zedong's CCP brought about a majority of China's unity, Mao's policies did not result in China being more powerful or rich. Following the massive leap ahead, tens of millions of people died, and the Cultural Revolution's decade-long power battles caused suffering for the whole populace. Although Deng Xiaoping signaled the beginning of a new age of economic prosperity, his economic output policies have gravely compromised China's ability to protect the environment. Under Hu Jintao's leadership, China saw the strongest economic development over the 10 years from 2002 to 2012. Nevertheless, despite Hu's slogan of a scientific approach to growth, corruption and destruction of the environment grew throughout the same era. That's all we have for you today. Take a look at China News. Xi Jinping is done. CCP YLCOLAPSE. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see all future videos, subscribe to the channel and switch on notifications. First and foremost, what do you think about these leaders, and how can you justify them more precisely? Please participate and share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you so much for watching.